Welcome, everyone. Great to see you all here. We're going to get going just now, and we're going to check if you are ready for the future. And Professor Rashied Small and Faith Ngwenya are going to be discussing the fact if you're ready for the future. I'll introduce them properly just now. It's great to see you all in the room. Deborah, Douglas, Emmanuel. Good to see Karen. We all know Karen. Malibongwe, Kate. Some familiar names as well. Songeso, very good to see you in the room this morning. Really looking forward to this webinar. I think as we wait for a few more people, we get going just now. Yeah, just a big thank you to SAIPA, not only for today, the collaboration in this webinar, but for the collaboration and partnership that's been ongoing with Cfos South Africa and the Finance Indaba for many years. We really believe in the connecting of finance professionals that we do, and really appreciate the support that we've received from SAIPA for many years. Please also hop over to the chat if you're in the room, and make sure the setting is set to everyone and introduce yourselves. It'd be great if you can also use the chat as we sort of go through the webinar to comment and to chip in with your comments. I'm quickly looking. Oh, there you go. See, I've lost something. I'm quickly going to stop sharing. Got a bit lost in my computer there, but here we are. Let's do the official intro. The disruption caused by the current pandemic should serve as a wake-up call for smart professional accountants. Hopefully we have loads of those in the room this morning. Resilience in the future will depend on the professional accountant's ability to cope with the materialization of unforeseen risks. The trends that will disrupt accountancy is something that we're going to discuss today. And obviously also that trend of how to become that trusted business advisor in times that are very uncertain. We'll also hear terms like chief value officer. What does that mean? And is a CFO, should a CFO actually be called a CVO? We're very fortunate to have two super experts in the room with Professor Rashied Small, executive at the SAIPA Center of Future Excellence. We've got Faith Ngwenya, Technical and Standards Executive also at SAIPA. And as I already said at the beginning, SAIPA has been a tremendous partner of the Finance Endowment Network and Cfos South Africa. So Professor Rashied and Faith, we really appreciate that. How it will go this morning is Professor Rashied and Faith will have a conversation about the topic. And as they chat about the future of the accountant, please just chip in the chat. I'll keep a close eye and make sure your question becomes part of the conversation. And we'll also keep a few minutes at the end to tackle a few additional questions. So with having said that, I'll be the one handing over to my two colleagues here. I'll go off screen, and over to you, Professor and Faith.
Thank you, Joel. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where we are unpacking the future of finance in a disruptive and uncertain environment. As indicated, my name is Faith Ngwenya, and I'm happy to be here to actually be sharing and also hearing, because what we are going to be doing is having a conversation of where we are as a profession, what has changed, looking back to how the things have been and where we are today. Are we ready for the fourth industrial revolution that is already upon us? It's not coming, but it already is upon us. So this is the time that we are just going to be talking about this, sharing our own experiences, and you as the audience are also an active participant in the discussion that we are holding today. You will realize that we are not going to be putting out any slides, because we want this to be a discussion of what do we see, where do we feel we need to be changing, as CFOs or more as Chief Value Officers, as we will be talking about this going on. I'll now just hand over to my colleague, Professor Rashied Small.
Thank you, Faith, and good morning to everyone. I think this is a topic which has not only, like Faith said, hit us because of the pandemic and what has happened. It has been an ongoing topic since the early 2020s, even before that, when people were talking about computers are coming to take the jobs of professionals within the accountancy profession and also within the finance profession. And both myself and Faith, there says a very simple welcome to you is bring it on. Let technology come, because we will show technology how we use and abuse them so that we can add value in terms of the services which we render. So we don't see the 4IR as a threat to us, but we see it more as giving us an opportunity to be free so that we can do much more valuable services to our clients and the economy. Thank you, Faith.
Prof, you actually remind me that when we were moving from the 1990s to the new century, there was the talks of, we even coined it Y2K, where everything is going to shut down, there will be blackouts everywhere. And really, I think when one considers what is happening now with the fourth industrial revolution, and when I think about 10 years ago, when we started seeing the amount of changes that we have seen, we realized that we are heading for another artificial intelligence blackout, or we are moving towards a new age in the techno space. So if one is looking at the role of us as financial officers, as financial, the preparers, the users of the information, what are we expected to do? How should we be equipping ourselves for this dynamic change that is approaching, the dynamic change that is being brought about by artificial intelligence, blockchain, what is even that? Cryptocurrencies. There is so much, the Internet of Things. So all of these are coming to us, and one then wonders is, what are these terms that are being thrown around? So can you just help us unpack what are these?
Faith, I think we're at a point in our lives as professionals within the accountancy and finance profession, where I'll say we are on that border of being schizophrenic. On the one side, we still have this regulatory requirement, which is compliance. And that's important, because without compliance, we may not have our licenses to practice, our businesses to practice. And you know, with SARS now taking a much harder stance on compliance, that is something we cannot forget. So that side, I think we have covered ourselves quite well in ensuring that we have all the skills necessary to ensure compliance, whether it's to the Tax Act, whether it's to the VAT Act, or whether it is to IFRS, etc. I think we got that skill set. But with the change of the century and with 4IR, it has thrown us into this tsunami where we are now being told, we no longer only want those compliance reports which you are using and producing for us. We now want you to guide us in this disruptive world to make decisions where they normally say change is the only constant, whereas I say now uncertainty is even more uncertain than previously. If you think that you know something about tomorrow today, when you wake up tomorrow, you'll see that you have probably made the wrong decisions because the level of uncertainty. And therefore, there's this paradigm shift, which I call the schizophrenic Rubicon, where we must enter into. And that is to say that We're no longer only producing information, but the demands placed on us in an environment that requires business to be agile within the disruptive environment we operate, is that we now need to say that when I give you information, you're going to use it for decision making to ensure that you are satisfying the demands of the new millennium investors who are instant gratification, but also the demands of your C-suite executives that needs it to no longer make decisions for budgetary purpose only, but to ensure that the business can drive itself into a strategic position to navigate itself in these changing environments. So for me, I think when you speak about artificial intelligence, it's where we must now know that robotics and computer systems and technology will give us information. And at the moment, research has proven that we are generating information 40 times more than what we did a year ago. And accessing and reading the information is even less. So for me, artificial intelligence is putting us into a position where we will now have to ask ourselves, do we understand the information? Do we know the story that the information is telling us? And how do we use that information to assist our clients and businesses navigate this disruptive waters? And we cannot just say business as usual.
Prof, just wait a minute. You really are moving too fast for us. We produce the information, we produce the reports. Yes, we use the reports to set our strategies. How is that going to change? Just help us understand, how is this changing? If I'm a financial accountant, I expect, am I no longer expected to be compiling financial statements and providing those financial statements to my shareholders? What are you saying to us?
Right, you still have that responsibility, but the shareholders are now going to ask you, Faith, as the financial accountant and professional, tell me why the number is what it is. Don't tell me my sales is now 30 billion. Tell me why it is 30 billion. Which means we now need to have those skill sets, which gives us an understanding of what drives the numbers. So when Faith stand up there in front of the shareholders and say, our profits has increased by 20%, you're going to have the shareholders that will ask you, Faith, why did it increase by 20% and not 50%? What have you contributed to the environment, to the communities? Please tell me. And then you're going to say, but I'm only here to produce the financial results. And the shareholders now are using a different perspective. So yes, we are good at giving, like they call us, financial historians, our historical information. Now the shareholders are telling us, become the surgeon of that financial information. Go and conduct your surgical operation and tell me, in that department, there's a bit of cancer. We need to remove it. In this department, the ground is so fertile, we can't keep up in harvesting the crops. And I think that is the skill set that we now need to do, is to say from our historians to our, what I'll say, our business surgeons or business doctors.
Prof, you truly have set the platform well when you said that we are crossing the Rubicon. We need a complete paradigm shift from what we have been doing in yesteryears to ensuring that with artificial intelligence, which is going to be doing a lot, when you look at the research that is being produced on which jobs are going to be most affected by the fourth and the fifth industrial revolution, the accountancy compliance work that you have spoken about is top on that list. And that really should be worrying us, that we need a different skill set that is going to provide us with the skills of performing the services that you are talking about. And at the same time, it's not only the financial officers that need to reinvent themselves, but also even the society, the shareholders, the type of discussions that we are going to have in our boardrooms and also at annual general meetings are going to be totally different discussions, because if one looks at what the artificial intelligence and also technology is doing right now, the shareholder can, at a press of a button, at any point during the year, get the financial statements. And that really was our brownie point as accountants, that here we have produced a set of financial statements, and yes, they have been audited, and they came out with an unqualified audit report. So what you are telling us is that we need to be rethinking. So what are these skill sets that we need to probably be looking into that are going to prepare us for this Rubicon?
I think, Faith, like you said, and I like what you said, that shareholders can press a button and get the financial statements and the results. And I think this is a significant skill that we now need to realize, that we're now going to move into becoming real time for professionals, which means I no longer present a set of financial statements for a period. My period can be reduced now within a day, a week, a month, etc. Which means I must be able to have that skill set to say that on a daily basis, I can produce financial statements. On a day-to-day basis, I can produce financial statements that will give the executives information that will allow them to enhance their competitiveness, to enhance their decision-making, and to position themselves so that they can navigate to this disruptive information. I was part of a shareholders meeting in Europe, and the average age of the shareholders, unfortunately, dropped below 40. And when the financial statements were presented, they normally get the applause, well done. The most of the questions that came was, tell us what you're doing for the environment. Tell us what you're contributing to the climate changes. Tell us what you're doing for relieving poverty. And that is the skill set which I think we have always pushed on the back burners, and now it's coming to the fore, which means we are now shifting our skill sets from only financial information to non-financial information, and that non-financial information gives us an indication of the value that businesses are creating to all its stakeholders and not only shareholders. So our skill sets are now going to shift to really understand what the information is telling us about the company, how it makes decisions, and how it governs itself.
You are now talking to us a different language. So the shareholders and the users of the information that we are producing have now got a different interest to what we have in the financials. But obviously this comes with being creative and also agile enough to change as and when there are these demands, these new demands that are coming from the society at large. So how can we, as the accountants and finance professionals, minimize the risk to the organization, where we have the principle of fail quickly or fail fast? How do we obviously avoid this risk, or how do we minimize this risk for organizations?
I think, Faith, what you have said now, in a disruptive environment, most successful businesses implement two stuff. One is innovation and creativity. But with innovation and creativity, there's a large component of risk. And when I give you, Faith, the 5 million to do your experiment, I don't want it to have a long-lasting negative effect on the business and its overall performance. And that's where the term comes. If you're experimenting, you must fail quick or fail fast, so that the impact of that is very minimal on the organization, both in terms of financial terms and also in terms of the organization's strategy. So as finance and accounting professionals, we must now develop a new skill, which is being broken down now into project accounting. And I think we have never looked at project accounting as being as significant unless we're doing projects. And once you start doing project accounting, I'm now not only accounting for the financial transactions, I'm also accounting to assess the basis on which that investment decision was made. And therefore, I need to do a return on investment analysis on a continuous basis to advise management with information to say, I think you now need to pull the plug, or I think we can invest more. And I think that changes our role from just reporting it, but now becoming an active participant in the decision-making process of being creative and innovative, where large investments are required, and return on investment and cash flow are the lifeblood of the organization and this project. So yes, project accounting is one of the skill sets we must look at. And I had a serious look at most of the curriculums for the professionals. Project accounting is where you're now going into project management, and they'll give you a bit of project accounting. And I think that's becoming where we need to say that's one of our areas of skill sets that we need. But also, I don't think as professionals, we have a continuous assessment of return of investment. I think we normally say, when we make the decision, we do our calculations and we feel so proud that we said, yes, our return on investment is greater than that which we expect. And then we report at the end of the period to say, you know, it's actually not as good as we think it was. And therefore, it now requires us to not only look at the actual transactions which are incurring, but understand the predictive nature of the information and reports which we are preparing. And that means that we must now develop analytical skills to be able to look at not only the insight into the information, but use those trends to make foresight decisions to ensure that we add value to our clients and our businesses. So yes, it is a different mindset that we're looking at. I know we have never said that as professionals, we're going to document futuristic information, because that we left to your financial managers or financial analysts to bring that in. But now we're fitting into that role as well, because we now need to say, I must assist my business from being innovative, creative, and also agile, but make sure that it does not drag the organization down.
Yeah, instant gratification is not only for the millennials out there, it's now coming into the financial sectors as well. Obviously, this places significant pressures and demands on accountancy and the profession. It doesn't matter whether you are a big corporate or you are an SMME. from what you are saying, this really is going to cut across. And therefore, the need of us becoming developing the analytical skills that you have spoken about becomes critical. And also a change from the producers of information to more users of information. This comes with business advisory. So how important is business advisory as an element for the SMME sector particularly?
Faith, I believe that business is business, but scalability is what separates SMMEs from large corporates. However, in the environment that you are using, the same principles will be applied, but the manner in which they are applied in the SME market changes significantly in terms of how you need to customize your principles for that particular environment. For me, what becomes very important for the SME market is that we know that SMMEs functions primarily on a cash basis. Yet, we provide them with financial reports on the accrual basis. And it gives them this false impression that we've got so much profit, so we should have so much money. And we need to rethink about what information becomes critical to the users of the financial statements to make the decisions. If it is internal, then it means if they make their decisions on a cash basis, then we need to provide them with information that drives those decisions. And this becomes important, especially where SMMEs don't have the luxury of access to finance. And this is where we now need to relook at how we provide them with information for accessing finance and information for making operating and business decisions. And I think you'll see even the finances now, like your banks and other funders, are now not only looking at your financial reports, they're also now looking at your non-financial information. Are you creating employment? Are you creating sustainability within the community? Are you contributing to the growth of society and economy? So those are the stuff which I think is now hitting SMMEs as well. I think if you go to a funder as an SMME and you say that within my supply chain, I also support the existence of 4 other SMMEs, financiers will look at you slightly differently. Although when you are a large corporate and you state that, then you get thumbs up because now you're contributing to the growth of the economy.
Prof, I will come to Zweli's question just now, but just you're speaking of the cash versus the accruals basis of accounting that we really are, put bluntly, fooling ourselves in providing these accrual-based accounting financial statements. And to me, I'm now thinking of you are a holder of Bitcoins, you invest in Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies that obviously are being developed all the time. So how will accounting for such currencies be different from what we have in our current monetary currencies that we currently are using?
Faith, I had a discussion with a number of people about 2 days ago about cryptocurrencies. And the nice thing about cryptocurrencies is that if you don't have it, you cannot trade with it. Now, for me, that brings us back to the principle of cash and debt-free. And I think in terms of that, which means cryptocurrencies is going to change the environment because you're now working from an equivalent cash basis of conducting and reporting business, which means if I buy goods from you in 30 days, for 30 days faith, I must provide you with security of my Bitcoins, which means technically you have that as security. So it's like me taking my budgetary amounts out of the system and saying, that is faith, I cannot touch it. And for me, when you look now at cryptocurrencies, it's going to change the manner in which we are reporting. And that will assist us to provide real-time information on which decisions are being made. And I think normally when you look at it, currently in our current monetary system is, I'm going to make an investment to purchase equipment. But at the back of my mind is also, I know I can get the money from my bank. I know I can get the money from this financier, but unfortunately with the cryptocurrencies, they're going to ask me now, do you have the cryptocurrencies and can you report this as such? And that will give us a totally different value of the business and how the business will function. For me, what was interesting, when the new mayor of New York was appointed, his first statement he made, he said, I want my salary to be paid in Bitcoins.
Yeah, that really is the reality of where we are and where we actually are heading. The question that came from Zweli Kaduka, it says, are we anticipating blockers that will hamper the full implementation of 4IR? That obviously will be the regulations from different institutions. I remember there were restrictions with respect to licensing of drones in South Africa versus regulations for amongst other regulations. So do we see the blockers like the regulations that are going to be put in hampering the growth?
I think, Faith, and this is where we can contribute, I think, to SMMEs and the economy at large. When regulations are being made, I think we as finance and accounting professionals must give input and say that, number one, regulations must drive our economy, must drive our development goals, and it must drive the making life and business easier. And I think when you look at regulations which come very restrictive, we need to say that instead of trying to bypass those regulations, we must contribute to making those regulations more effective. I think if you look at the regulations for the drones, I think we also need to realize that if it is not regulated, the level of airwave accidents is going to increase. So it means we will no longer just be worrying about the roads, because I think what's going to happen is if drones are going to fly all over, I think we're going to start driving with our one eye in the sky, looking at which drone is following me and another one on the road. And I think we need to look at the risks involved. But I think if you look at 4IR and how 4IR can benefit business and especially SMMEs, I think we'll see that there are far more benefits than what regulations will be restrictive. I think if you look at using 4IR as a networking facility, whereby if I have a business which is dependent on you being my supplier, Faith, because technology will allow us to have that interaction. So when I need goods tomorrow morning, I know that Faith had those goods available in our warehouse and delivery can be much easier. So it's going to reduce the entire costs of businesses, and that will contribute to the flourishing of SMMEs across all sectors, because we now have this collective pool of resources that everyone can tap into. And I think for me, the next change in where we need to think and upskill ourselves is about blockchain technology, because blockchain technology will allow a group of similar-minded business people, professionals, to be together and start sharing resources and therefore reducing the cost to acquiring those resources.
Yeah, and Prof, if you're talking blockchain technologies, that obviously is real time on the second, nanosecond, and really the speed with which those transactions will actually be moving is unimaginable. And that becomes quite important for us as professionals to start thinking of how do we prepare ourselves for this. So what are the relevant areas of development that we as professionals need to, because we can't go back to, in fact, universities are not even prepared for what we are talking about. So what is it that we need to do to be able to, if my client already, there are professionals and there are entities that are already trading in Bitcoins. We have got clients that already have got blockchain transactions. So what are the skills that we need for this?
I think the first skill that we must tell ourselves, and I think this is the misconception within the profession in general, is that everyone is now trying to do a program here, a short course there on coding. Now for me, like finance and accounting professionals, we are specialists in our area. And unfortunately, coding does not fall into that area. But what we need to do is that we now need to collaborate with people who are IT specialists in coding and provide them our needs for information. And they can do the coding as to how that information will be utilized. And therefore, I say, for me, it's not doing coding, but is, do we know how to utilize technology optimally to benefit clients in terms of the services which we are rendering? So my advice would say, understand technology and how it contributes to you navigating your client's needs. And I always say that if you understand your client, then you know what product is appropriate for their particular environment in which they are operating. And that for me is one of the skills. So our skill about that we need is not technology so much, but understanding how technology works, how we can use it, and how we can navigate with the technology to enhance the value and quality of the services which we are rendering.
Prof, you are touching on a number of key areas. Earlier, you spoke about the importance of us moving from just reporting on the financials, but going into sustainability of organizations, sustainability reporting. And this now requires us to a certain extent, because if you were to ask me, what is the carbon footprint of SAIPA as an organization? I'll just say, how do I do that? I'm just an accountant. But you obviously require me to be able to value that. So which then requires that we have got a lot of networking with the other professions and rely on their expertise in delivering what we are doing. I think previously we have just been in our own world as accountants, and we have been producing the information, consuming the information, and doing everything by ourselves. But what the fourth industrial revolution seems to be bringing to us, it's saying, hey, you can no longer just be getting the IT guy to give you a software that you are going to continue and then manipulate. But now you need the IT guy to, or the IT person, let me not say guy, the IT person to be with you all the way. Coding, which is becoming quite critical in the processing of this artificial intelligence, blockchain transactions. So that obviously requires us to be sitting around the table across each other on a day-to-day basis. So we can no longer just rely on our skills as accountants, as financial officers, but we need the other skills. We need the engineers. We need the digital professionals. So how important is this collaborating with the other professions if we want to see success as professionals?
Right, I think I always go back to what's happening to the professions in general across all sectors, to say that the professions are embarking on a globalization transformation. And this globalization transformation says that working within silos is no longer beneficial to the clients that we render services to. And therefore, I always say that when I look at it, I know we always say that we have 5 fingers that can operate independently. But when we take those 5 fingers and we convert them into a fist, then we're much more powerful. And I think that is where the profession is moving towards. And interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary skills are coming to the fore as technology is advancing. And the more we start networking across sectors, which is critical to us in rendering quality services, the more value we will add to our clients. And it will also become much more cost efficient because we are now utilizing collective resources to provide services within a specific sector. So it's not just that the IT people will require, that we require the IT people, but the IT people will also require our services because they need to make financial decisions as well. And that mutual understanding is where we will start developing the value chain across professions.
Thanks, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to pop them in the Q&A section or even in the chat section. We're monitoring that as we are in this dialogue. Prof, I want us now to just shift gears a bit. We have got so much information, we have got so much data that we are generating as organizations. And it has been proven that we're sitting on a gold mine, if not a platinum. I'm not sure which one in these days is more expensive than the other. But we really are sitting in this, but we do not realize it. So how can organizations, both small and large, make use of the data that they have got at their disposal?
I think, Faith, like you said, both platinum as well as gold require a certain level of mining. And as professionals, we need to develop our skills in data mining or information mining. And once we are able to mine the information that is necessary for our clients and their decision making, I think we will add so much more value in terms of our services that we are able to render. So that's the one part which I think is the gold mine that we need to look at. But also, we must remember that the information that we're sitting on is the most valuable resource to businesses in general. Without information, you cannot make effective decisions. Without information, you cannot monitor your progress and development. Without information, you cannot monitor performance. So what we need to do is to say, how do we now use information and align that information with our core competencies within the business that is driving its sustainability, which means is it still useful for me to provide a statement of financial performance or income statement by description when my business are driven by activities, which means I may have to look at converting my income statement to a functional reporting statement, which means I'll now report by functions rather than by descriptions. And that will give me much more useful information to say, my sales department is doing well, but my manufacturing or warehouse department is keeping us back. Now, when I look at the set of financial statements as it is, I cannot pick that up because I just see income and expenses, and income and expenses, salaries and wages are all cluttered together. And once we start looking at that information, we'll actually start extracting the value of the information that is useful not only for reporting purposes, but also for decision-making purposes.
Do you want to talk to us about infonomics?
Infonomics, Faith, I think that's a term that I started researching about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I sit, especially with government policymakers, the larger component of those policymakers are economists rather than financial or accounting practitioners. And when they look at value, they speak about economic value. So when we speak about return on investment, they speak about the economic value of the investment. And once we start looking at infonomics, it now says that we're looking at the economics of the information which you said we are sitting on as a gold mine, which means I think if you look at infonomics from an accountancy and finance professional, we must say that this becomes our natural resource. And if we are able to extract the value from those natural resources, which is the information, and convert it to economic value, then we'll be able to speak to a larger audience other than just the business owners, the financial managers, etc. So when they now speak to policymakers, they can say, you know, the taxes that we are paying contribute to X% of our GDP. The saving that we're making in terms of creating employment contributes to X% of our unemployment or our employability rates. And I think once we start talking that and we extract the value of the information in that sense from an economic perspective, as well as linking our economic value to our financial value, we're going to provide the finance world with new information to make effective decisions, which will have much more long-term benefits for society and the country at large.
I see new standards that are going to be developed that are obviously going to be going beyond the financials, beyond the figures, because that is how we should obviously be looking at our reporting to our stakeholders and also to the users of our financial information or of our statements, because of our reporting that we are producing. We're not even going to be calling it financial statements, because we will be going beyond the financials when we are reporting going forward. I see new formulae that's going to be developed on how we calculate a lot of the things that we had, assets over your turnover, to actually get the ratios. I see us now looking at what is it that we are contributing, what value are we creating out of the information that we have generated over the period, and that is what we will actually be putting a price to. Prof, this actually brings us to what Joel mentioned earlier, that we are so used to being chief financial officers, and which obviously is working, looking backwards and looking at what has already happened, telling being proud about how profitable the organization is. But what is a chief value officer? And how do we reinvent ourselves from CFOs to CVOs?
Yeah, Faith, I think when we look at our CFOs, I think we just focus, we have a very narrow vision, which says we're only looking at the numbers and nothing but the numbers from a financial perspective. But we forget that those numbers are underpinned by decisions and activities. When we start looking at converting or transforming ourselves to a chief value officer, we are now digging behind the numbers and asking ourselves, what activities and decisions drove those numbers? And if I know what drove the numbers in a positive manner, then I can make a decision about the value of those activities to my financial results. If those activities have a negative impact on my financial information, I know that I need to take remedial action. So when we look at the chief value officer, we're now saying that we must look at the business holistically and not only the financial aspect of businesses. So when I say that we're going to invest X amount in the marketing campaign, I must be able to say that that marketing investment had these consequences on my financial results and how I can project using that same strategy going forward. So for me, when you become a chief value officer, I say you are now becoming more than a business advisor, more than a business analyst, more than a leader within the organization, and more than a finance person that controls the purses. And I almost take it in our South African situation that we'll get away with things with our parents. But when our grandparents speak, we sit up and listen. And I think for me, the chief value officer is going to play that role. Oversight role, guidance role, but also leading the organization into the future. And that is understanding what value the organization generate, what value the organization distribute, and what value the organization retains to ensure sustainable growth of the organization. So it's a different skill sets that we now need to look at. And I think the concept that once you're now a chief financial officer, you must do an MBA so that you understand business at large. I think the chief value officer goes beyond that, because you now also need to look at the psychology of numbers, the psychology of people, the psychology of processes, the psychology of decision-making, and that is where value is created.
Prof, you really have taken us from being surgeons, dentists, scientists, and now we're psychologists. Really, we are in an age where we should agree that we are in a VUCA age, VUCA, which means we have to be, it's a volatile environment that we are existing in with the fourth industrial revolution. There's a lot of uncertainty. It's a lot of complexity that comes out and ambiguity. But what's important to that, we have to remain as agile as possible to ensure that we are still serving the profession the best way we know how. Joel, I'll now hand over to you.
Thank you so very much, Faith, and thanks, Prof. and Faith, for such a rich, I can't find the words, rich discussion. I think you touched on an incredible amount of aspects of the finance professional, the accountant of the future. Maybe just in the for time's sake, because we did manage to have a jam-packed hour and we're almost at the top of the hour, but maybe just a last question from my side. Obviously linking it to what SAIPA does on a daily basis, you've really painted the picture of where the accountant needs to be. And I think we can all acknowledge this is a journey, right? We're not here today. How does SAIPA change itself, and how does SAIPA also help its members and its future members and the accountancy practice in general to make that journey together? Maybe you can just have a quick response on that before we close off.
I think, Joe, from our side, and I think here myself and Faith does a lot of work, is that our ambition is to ensure, one, that our members will be the most sought after in their profession. Two is that they remain relevant within the profession. But more importantly for us is that we don't just want our members to adapt to change. We want our members to drive change. And when you drive change, it means you are now looking not only at tomorrow, you're looking at 15, 20 years ahead. So what we're looking at is to say, what will our members do which we don't know now? And that means they need to be agile, not physically, but mentally. They need to be ready to manage risk. And they also need to ensure that they look at their services as a contribution to business growth, economic growth, and the growth of the country.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. I'm going to put the slide up again as customary at the end of these webinars. I'm going to thank everyone very, very much for attending this super interesting webinar. And obviously, the biggest thanks goes to SAIPA for making the webinar possible, for sharing the insights, and for supporting the Finance Indaba network throughout the year, and for the long-standing relationship with Cfos South Africa. Prof and Faith, thank you so much for the very engaging discussion, touching on so many things. I think there are so many elements of this webinar sort of ask for further exploration in perhaps future webinars, articles, etc. So really looking forward to engage further on those. We still have a few webinars in store this year. I think the next one that we have sorted is the one on the 2nd of September. So please, if you want to know about XBRL, then head over to cfo.co.za/events and sign up for this one. It's going to be super informative. There'll be one or two more in between, so those will be on the same URL as well. So please join us for those, and then we look forward to going into the Christmas break with lots of knowledge that's brought to you by the Finance Indaba network, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. But for now, I'm going to thank you all for joining, and hoping to see you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. Faith.